Well, I'm thrilled that tonight Alex Kurial is willing to come and talk to us. I think the position of editor of the Undercurrent is one of the most fascinating on the island. Nobody sees everything that's going on the island and has to be able to interpret it and present it in a balanced fashion for all of us. But if there is drama and culture, this person seems to be there to interpret it for us. Alex is educated at the University of Victoria, and then he went off to Carleton. He's been a court reporter in Sarnia and covered sports in Prince Rupert, and we're thrilled to have him here on Bowen Island and with us tonight. Alex, welcome.
All right, thank you, Robert, and I'd like to thank you for setting this all up, and to the Rotary for having me tonight. It's very exciting. And I'd like to thank you all for the articles that you've sent me since I've started here as well. They've always been very informative, and I've learned a lot from them, and they've been great contributions. So thank you for those too. Yeah, so when you first pitched this, Robert, I think it was something along the lines of, I am always asking questions, but now you wanted to hear a little from me, which naturally made me a little nervous, just because I haven't really been on the other side much of doing interviews. I know when I got the role and Martha Perkins called me up and said, I want to ask you some questions. I was like, wow, like I hadn't thought about this, but I haven't done this in a long time. Yet I'm always, getting info from people and asking them what's going on with them. So I think this will be a good thing to do. And I look forward to some good questions at the end there. And then the only other reason I was nervous is because I have never really spoken to very big crowds before. Like the biggest would be my classes, like at university. So maybe 30 people max. But that all went out the window the other week when I did that all candidates meeting. So now that I have that under my belt, I thought, oh, this will just kind of be a piece of cake. As long as a few hundred people don't start showing up in the Zoom, then I think I'm good. And then also since then, one of my best friends asked me to MC their wedding next year. So this is some good practice for that as well. Yeah, so I guess I'll kind of start off with a little about how I got into this. So I was born over in Vancouver, and then I grew up in Richmond. If anyone knows Hugh Boyd Secondary School over in Seafair, that's where I graduated from. And that's where I got my first journalism experience. You could say we had a student newspaper called the Trojan Pride. The Trojans were our mascot. And in grade 12, I took a journalism, it was like a combined journalism creative writing course because not many kids ever took it. I was a little surprised they even got to offer it, and we got put out in the portable unit in the back of the school to conduct the class. But we had a very good teacher, Mr. Haddo, and he taught us like sort of the basics. It was my first real introduction to it. And I wrote I think we printed like 2 or 3 times only each year. And I wrote some very like basic stories about the football team or athletics, but it was a really good intro into journalism. And I always liked to write. So I thought, well, let's see what this is like. And then, so yeah, that was my first real bit on it. After that, I went to University of Victoria, and I was fully convinced I was going to be a teacher at the end of it. I really liked the idea of working with students, younger students, like I'm talking elementary school because I was afraid the high school students would, push back at you and stuff. But I thought, before they hit like grade 6, 7, they're not giving you too much attitude. So that was really where I thought I was going to go with this. And so I was doing a history degree, and I thought after that I'll go and get my teaching degree. And I might even have done that at UVic. They have a very good program there. But then, as it happened, a lot of my friends also ended up going to UVic, and a lot of them were on the soccer team there, the Vikes. So I would be at all the games watching, and one of my other friends that I made at UVic, Kevin, picked up on this, and he had become editor of the sports section of the Martlet, which is our student paper, over at UVic. And so he asked, hey, like, you're at all these games, all these people, do you want to try writing a few articles for us? And I was like, oh, sure. Like, again, how to craft a journalistic story. I had a vague idea from high school, but, I figured I was there, I'd give it a shot. So I'd watch the game, right? I would say at the start, they were not the most exciting recaps. They were almost like the play-by-play you find in a box score, as I was trying to find a voice. But I talked to the people after the game, I'd get some quotes, and I liked doing it. And for some reason, they thought the stories were good. So I kept on with that. And then as the years went on at UVic, I took on more and more sports roles at the Martlet. And then I also saw that we had a minor you could take in journalism and professional writing. And so I had already taken a couple of the classes for that, because when I first got there, the electives I had taken just worked out to be ones that satisfied these writing credits. And so then by the third year, I decided, oh, well, like, I've taken all these courses. The third and fourth year had more like journalism specific courses in them. So I hopped on those and really liked them more and more. And the more like detailed they got, we'd have guest lecturers come in that were journalists. We even had one who taught one of our classes one year as like a guest professor. And then the real clincher was in my final year, the sports journalism class, specifically taught by Tom Hawthorne, who was probably my favorite professor at UVic. And there I really learned like how to craft. He taught us how to go beyond, like, my stuff was kind of play-by-play-ish till then, but he taught us how to find narratives in sports, because there's so many, and it's so much more than just like the box score. I think in a lot of ways, sports, you can tell I'm passionate about sports, but sports kind of is a metaphor for a lot of what we go through day to day. And if you can find that and talk about it, I think that's what people really want to dive into when they're reading these pieces. And so that I took my final year. I had been really happy with the work I'd been doing at the Martlet. And I just loved like the student paper vibe. Like they tucked us away really deep in the basement of the student union building. And, not much light permeated down there, but it was such like a cool atmosphere, and getting to know like not just the sports people, but like the arts and culture people, the news people, the lifestyle people, like the exchange of ideas was so exciting. And I thought I kind of want to be in this environment like more. So after I graduated the last year, I took some time off after that, and then I started looking at grad schools for journalism in Canada, and there's not too many, to be honest, up here. There's, I would say, about half a dozen major ones. And that's very few compared to the States. I mean, obviously we're not going to have the same numbers, but it does limit you a little in where you can go. So I applied to 3 of them. I applied here to UBC, I applied to Carleton, and I applied to Dalhousie. And I guess, you know, fate was telling me it was time to leave home because I got into everyone but UBC. So then it was kind of a hint that it was time to head east. And I thought, well, I think Ottawa is far enough east than Halifax. I had lived in Charlottetown for a few years when I was very young. And I do love the Maritimes, but Ottawa and specifically Carleton has a very good reputation in the journalism world. So I thought, well, I'm gonna go for that one. And I'm so glad I did. I got there and the program was wonderful. I learned so much and I made some amazing friends there. And just being in the city where, like, it's not, people say Ottawa is kind of boring and dull and, you know, it doesn't have the most nightlife. And to an extent that's true, but that's not true for journalism because you have Parliament Hill right there. You have the Supreme Court right there. It's the capital of the country right there. And so from a journalist perspective, like our first field trip was to Parliament and we sat in on a question period where they go back and forth and just going around and seeing like this is the hub of where things are happening in Canada was really exciting. And our professors did a great job of exposing us to all that. And so there was never like a lack of stories to find in that city. And so I came in as like the sports guy of the group, I would say. I feel like they were kind of, they had people from a lot of different like backgrounds in journalism. Like a lot of our class had been professionals already and were coming back to school, and many of them had like more newsy backgrounds, I would say. And I think when someone was going through the admissions pile, they said, hey, we need a sports fellow in here. So I think that specific background I had helped me there. But I started branching out and really getting more rounded, I felt. And I still did a lot of sports. And one of the things I was really excited to do there was join the school sports social media teams. So our teams were called the Ravens, and I started off with hockey, covering that because we had a class assignment to go live tweet an event. I was like, oh, I'll go live tweet a sports game. And then the athletic department DM'd me in my Twitter and said, we really liked your tweets from last night. What do you think about joining our team? And so I thought that was pretty cool. And so first year I did hockey. Second year I did football and basketball. And learning the social media was really big because it's a completely different world. It's a completely different language. And I know it gets knocked a lot, but it has a very different value than like a news article, and it engages a very different type of audience. And I think for all social media's faults, there is absolutely a place for it, especially somewhere like that where you want to engage people, you want it to be fun, you want to see what's going on. You really can have a lot of fun with that, like Instagram stories and Twitter and things. So that's just kind of my plug for that. I still wrote articles and recaps and profiles, but it was neat experiencing another side of media through that job. And then maybe the most formative and fateful event, fateful in a good way, of my time at Carleton was that I got an internship. So we had to do 16 weeks of out of class, so 4 months experience for a graduation requirement. And so most of us wanted to knock off a big chunk in the first summer, because that's when we have 4 months off. So theoretically, we could even finish it in that time. And I was fortunate to get a job at the sadly now defunct, but at the time very active Vancouver Courier, over by Cambie Street in the city. And the editor there at the time was Martha Perkins. And not only was she the editor, the other intern there was Bronwyn. So the three of us were all connected. And this is way back in the summer of 2018. And then 3.5 years later, we all came together again when this position opened up. So I just always find that so funny how things work out. And working at the Courier was amazing, working with Martha and Bronwyn. And that was definitely the most fast-paced newsroom I had worked in, which is understandable because not only is it Vancouver, and not only were we a pretty big team, but at the time, Glacier had a lot of their publications in that building. So there was us, there was Vancouver is Awesome, there was Business in Vancouver, and then there were just a ton of other Glacier staff there. So it was really like a massive newsroom. And I believe it still is very large, just minus the Courier. So that was so much fun. And then when Bronwyn finished her internship there, she wrapped it up before me. She hopped right over here to the Undercurrent. And I remember Martha getting ready to take her over to Bowen and show her around. And I didn't really know much about Bowen at the time. I knew the Undercurrent needed an editor, and Bronwyn had just finished her final, it was called a master's research project, which is how we cap off our graduation. And she had literally just finished hers, and then Martha was taking her over to Bowen. So I always just found that an amazing time that kind of came full circle now with myself. So that was a very fun and informative summer. And then I went back for the second year. And then you kind of get thinking like, oh, you're going to be done in a few months, and you get to leave the warm, or you have to leave the warm, cozy world of academia and go find a job now. And so I'd say probably come the final term is when I really started looking at that in earnest. And I thought, what do I want to do, and where do I want to go? And I loved Ottawa. It was a great city, and it was a great school, Carleton. But part of me wanted to get back to BC for a while and come home. And so this posting came up in March from Prince Rupert, and they were looking for a sports reporter at the Northern View. And so I thought, oh, well, that'd be perfect for me. Like sports, you mix in a little community news too. I thought these are the kind of stories that I already like to do. So I'll give it a shot. And to show how wide the Carleton network is, the editor they're hiring was, she had just graduated from the program a few years before me. And her name was Shannon. And we had a chat for about an hour. And then at the end, she was like, yeah, I'd love to offer you the position. And she wanted me to be sure I wanted it, because I think they had some people say yes before and then maybe take another offer. And this was still March. I had 2 months left of school, so it wasn't like I'd be an immediate hire anyway. But no, that was the job I wanted, and I said yes to Prince Rupert. And then at the end of April, as fate would have it, my classmate actually got a job there as well, because they were hiring a news reporter. And she went for that one and got it. So we both drove out together from Ottawa to Prince Rupert, which was a very long drive. I thought we would never get out of Northern Ontario. If anyone's ever done that run. But we did, and made it all the way there. And then it was time to get to work. And in a way, it was a lot of what I had been doing with the Ravens sports teams, like going to games and covering them. Going to, what was kind of new to me was going to like some of these community events. Not like, we had done a lot of that in Carleton, because some of our challenges were to like go out and cover stuff around town. But now, like any sort of little event any group was having, that was what people wanted to see in the paper. We were very much a community and sports driven paper, I feel. And so that was, up to me not to miss an event. And most of these events were on weekends. So I worked, I think it was a Friday to Tuesday schedule, which kind of threw me off in terms of like my perception of time, because we'd finish production day on Tuesday, and then I'm like, oh cool, it's like time, it's the weekend, and then everybody's got work tomorrow. So it's just funny to think of the weekend reporters, and I see them out there covering these stories, and I'm like, oh, I remember what that was like. And well, that does happen to an extent here. It is nice that you're not on the clock specifically. So Prince Rupert was lovely. It is probably the most beautiful like landscape and backdrop I've ever seen in a city, and certainly the drive from Terrace to Prince Rupert along the Skeena River is the most beautiful drive I've ever taken. And the natural beauty up there is just unbelievable. And there's a lot happening with the port. They have the third largest port in Canada. So that leads to a lot of business stories and community events in the town, because the port sponsors like a new playground or a wrestling tournament or stuff like that. And then you have to go check that out, and definitely make sure the port stories are very nice, because they were backers of the newspaper as well. So yeah, I really enjoyed that job. A lot of it was doing sports, it was community, and it was very like positive stories and feel good things. And that's kind of what I like to do. And I was there about 9-ish months, I would say. And then there were some layoffs at the paper, unfortunately. And I didn't really feel like going forward there would be a whole lot of job security there. So I started looking around and seeing what else there was in the media landscape. And part of my decision making was that I may like to be an editor one day. The editor who hired me in Prince Rupert left for another job actually a few weeks after I started. So we never really had an editor while we were up there. We had a publisher. but that editor role was always kind of empty. And I thought, who knows, maybe one day I might like to fill it. It won't be here, obviously, but it could be somewhere. But I thought, if I want to do that, I need to show that I can take on like hard news stories and tackle like the day-to-day stuff. And not to say, in my opinion, that that's any harder than doing sports, but you need to show you're well-rounded. So you need a little bit of everything. So I was looking at the Canada-wide postings on this journalism job board, and I saw one in a town I had never heard of. And I think few people here have heard of it either. It's called Petrolia, Ontario, nestled down in oil country in Southwest Ontario. I was actually stunned. Someone who did know about it was when I was interviewing John Turner the other week. He had heard of this town, and I couldn't quite believe it. So the paper was called the Petrolia Independent, and the job was covering the courthouse in Sarnia, which is, I would say, about a 25-minute drive away. But the Sarnia courthouse covers all of Lambton County. So if I had to describe where this is exactly, I would say it's on it borders Lake Huron and also Michigan to the west, northeast of Windsor. It's not the Detroit crossing, but it's the Blue Water Bridge crossing, a little north of Chatham Kennedy. So I thought, well, it's a new adventure. It's not, things can't continue here. So I packed up and made the drive right back to Ontario and did the interview with the editor in Petrolia, Heather, from my friend's house in Edmonton along the way. And I guess I was pretty confident in myself to have started the trip without having actually gotten the job, but it worked out and we had another great chat. And she said, she recognized I, obviously did not have courtroom experience, but the samples of writing I had sent her, she thought there was a lot of potential there to pick it up pretty quick. And she was impressed with that. And then we just had a very nice call. So I think that helped sell it as well. And so I got there, and pretty much when I left Prince Rupert, we were getting the first rumblings about COVID. So this was end of February 2020. And it's kind of like those movies, where they throw in hints, like in those apocalyptic movies, something's going wrong, like you read a newspaper article, like mysterious virus discovered or something. And this is now looking back what was happening with COVID. We were getting the first signs of it. And I think right around then too, the first Canadian case, I want to say early March. But I was preoccupied with this move and didn't really clue into it till I got to Ontario, and then everything pretty much shut down like immediately. And it was a strict shutdown back then. It was mass, it was capacity limits, it was everything. And here I was trying to start a new job in a new community, and there was really no way to go out and do anything. Like I didn't even go into work for 3 months. I went in once when I got there to meet my editor and the Petrolia team. And then I was back home and I was watching at first. My first court case I covered, I did it on the phone. we would dial in and then type in some numbers to access your specific courtroom. And then all I got was an audio feed, and it was just bizarre. You had to listen real close to see who was talking in case they didn't say who they were at first. And then there was no like visual cues you could go off of or anything. And so I did find it a struggle at first. Thankfully, very quickly, they set up a video system for the courtroom, which was miles better than just the audio, but still so far from being there in person and being able to like see what's going on and, you know, how the people are reacting and stuff. So, and that never really changed while I was there. The courthouse never really reopened. I probably went in person, I don't even know if it was 10 times. We would get like periods where the numbers got less, like the COVID numbers, particularly in, I think the summer, they got a little better, and then courthouse would try opening for a bit, and then fall hit, right back to being closed. And so most of my days were just spent like I am right now, like watching the screen and checking the docket each night, seeing who was up tomorrow, and then dialing in on Zoom. And just, I didn't have my face on there most of the time. I just had Petrolia Independent, but it was such a bizarre experience. Because you think of court, you think of like everyone's there in person and like courtroom drama and all that. But when you're doing that over Zoom, you lose a lot of the feel. And I get why they did it, and the whole justice system adapted. Like there were much less jail sentences for smaller crimes, such as like drug related ones, and the judges would say this is because we're trying to keep people out of jail because of COVID. And so like sentences that were a month or 2 months or so were usually just time served. They had gotten rid of intermittent sentencing completely, which is weekend jail, because they didn't want people going in and out. So it was just a very surreal experience, kind of like, this is my job, I'm watching the Zoom screen for most of the day and then writing about it. But I will say that didn't make, I said earlier, I wanted some hard news experience, and court reporting was certainly that. Like, even though you were not in the room, that did not make the material any less heavy, let's say, and difficult to deal with. And for whatever reason, the first few weeks or months, I hadn't had anything. Like, they were not, no cases are good if it goes to court, but it was nothing that stuck with me so much. And then when those cases do come along, they hit you very hard, I would say. Hearing like victim impact statements or seeing like imagery from crime scenes and things like that. And it eventually will start to sort of wear on you when this is what you're doing every day. And you might start to think like, if these are the only people you're dealing with in a day, you kind of start to think like, oh, is this what, you know, all of the society and community is like? And it's important to remember, it's not. It's definitely not. But when that's kind of, you know, who you're hanging out with for 8 hours or so, and then writing about after, like, it's tough to just leave that at work at night. And I had a bit of a drive home which is where I would decompress. But you can't always just leave everything at the office. And so that is a tough role. And it's not just for the journalists, it's for the judges, the lawyers, the clerks, the security, anyone who has to sit there and see that stuff and listen to that. So, and then even like what I write in the paper is a much toned down version of what you hear in the courtroom. And I know why you have to hear that in the courtroom. And I also recognize why we don't put every detail in the paper, because you don't need to know all of that either. You can just, you get the picture of what happened, and that's what you read in the paper is really tough enough in my sort of experience. So that was a tough job. And then adding on to that was that there was no real like social outlet because of COVID. So it's not like you just, go hang out with a bunch of friends after. Like there's no way, there wasn't really a way to go out and meet people, at least safely. I know not everyone, lived the same life during COVID, but I was fairly cautious of it, especially until the vaccine came out. So, a lot of it was just home, work, back home again, and very rarely actually going to court in Sarnia. So thankfully there is some good scenery out there. The St. Clair River Drive is absolutely gorgeous. That separates Canada and the USA. And Lake Huron and then Lake Erie, also south of Chatham, are very nice. But again, like this wasn't really my area. I didn't really get to know anyone. Even I have a lot of friends in Ottawa, but that's a good 8-hour drive. Even Toronto's a 3-hour drive. And then COVID just really seemed to be dragging. I mean, of course, it's still going on to an extent now, but I remember there were numbers in Ontario that were just staggering throughout. So as 2020 passed into 2021, it was not a very fun time to be out there. But I did like the job for sure. The workplace was amazing. I had such a good editor, and she owned and ran that paper and another paper in a town just outside of Chatham, Kent called Thamesville. And so I did a little work there as well. And yeah, she was just an all-star in terms of showing me what it's like to run an independent paper. Because it is not easy. Like here at Glacier and in Prince Rupert at Black Press, like we were able to pull from like our neighboring papers, right? Like here I have North Shore News, I have Squamish Chief, I have Bronwyn stuff with Coast Reporter. But when you're an independent paper, like you're kind of on your own to fill those pages and to get that advertising. And so I don't know that it's something I would necessarily want to do, just because I saw how much work it was and how late the nights were. But the way she did it and the prestige that paper had, and it was just so impressive to me that it can be done, and you can make a paper in a very small town like a real player on the media scene. But yeah, so I was doing that job, I guess, a year and a half. And then near the end of last year, I guess I was again getting a little homesick and trying out for jobs. I had applied for a job at a radio station in Vancouver before this one became available, and didn't get that. And then one day while I was checking the sites, I saw Bowen Island Undercurrent editor. And I was like, whoa. And I texted Bronwyn and said, does this mean you're leaving? And she was like, yeah, she told me she was going to be the new editor in Seashell at Coast Reporter. And I said, congrats, that's amazing. And then followed up if anyone had put in a claim for the job here yet. And she said, no, there was not any like successor in mind. A few people had applied, but the application deadline was still open. And so I thought, okay, like I'm gonna give this a shot. And I sent an email to the publisher, Peter Varnstrom, who some of you might know. He recently stepped down. I know you know him, Michael. He recently stepped down from publisher here, and we have an amazing new publisher, Matt Blair. But now Peter is, as far as publishing goes, just doing the Coast Reporter, since that is his original paper, and he'll never get that one up. But he was the publisher at the time when I applied, and so I did a Zoom interview with him from my little house in Wallaceburg, Ontario. There's so many little towns in southern Ontario, it just made my head spin. And I name all these towns, but they're all really within a pretty close radius to each other. And so I lived in one town, worked in another two. The place I was working, technically, the courthouse was in another one. And you end up putting on a fair bit of miles living down there, driving those farm roads. But yeah, I had an amazing interview with Peter, and I really liked the sound of the job. And I knew from like being Bronwyn's friend that she had enjoyed the job as well. And she described Bowen as this kind of like very special place. And I had never really been here, like maybe when I was a young kid, but never old enough to remember it. All I really knew of it was that whenever I would go to my favorite beach at Spanish Banks, I was told that that big mass over there was Bowen Island. But I'd never been here. I couldn't picture what went on here. And so, but I thought, hey, if Bronwyn has described it so well, it's got to be pretty neat. And so I had the interview with Peter, and then it went very well. And the next day he told me I had gotten the job. And Bronwyn was, of course, leaving. So he's like, can you, now we're trying to fill this quickly, can you be here in 2 weeks? And I said, well, I need to give 2 weeks at my job, and then I need 1 week just to drive across the country. So he's like, okay, 3 weeks, we can start. And Martha, thank bless her, was filling in the meantime again. And then, so I packed up somewhat at my house. I had some friends finish after I left, because you find even in a small place, you can't pack it up that quick. There's always like more stuff you find. And then I had filled my car like to the point where it was busting. Like I could fit my keyboard but not the stand, pretty much, like car full. And then I needed my co-pilot, my orange cat Dax, to fit as well in the front seat. So there was some room gone too. And then I remember I had made an itinerary to leave on a Sunday and get here on Saturday. And if I had to stick to it, I finally just one Sunday night was like, okay, I just gotta go. And so I took off and I went through the states because, as I referenced earlier, Northern Ontario takes forever. And I didn't think I could, mentally or physically handle doing that drive again. Not alone anyway. I-90 is much more friendly than that rural Highway 11 across Northern Ontario. So I went down through the states. That was actually, it was a quick trip, and I wouldn't say like a recreational trip of any sort, but I did get to see a lot of cool stuff driving that highway, and there's much more I want to go back and see now. But all those states like the Dakotas and Wyoming and Montana are just so beautiful. And I know people think, oh, there might not be much going on there, but they are absolutely worth a trip just to see. I've never seen sky that stretches that far, or some of the scenery that I saw along the way. So I was glad I took that route. And then, yeah, I made it back home. I had to stay in the States an extra day because they were still requiring negative COVID tests at the border, and mine took an extra day to get back. So I spent an extra night in Bellingham. And then on Sunday, I got back home here to my mom's house in Richmond. And then Monday morning, I took the ferry over to Bowen. And after a while of walking around Village Square, I finally figured out where the office was for the Undercurrent. I remember Martha was giving me like directions. She's like, it's at 495, I think our address is, Trunk Road, but she's like, you got to go down a level and it's under the pharmacy. And I did eventually find it somehow. And then we kind of got to work from there. And Martha was just amazing in showing me how to do everything, especially with our layout program InDesign and how to put the paper. But so much more than that, she just like taught me who people were and about the history of this place. And we would go on drives and she would point stuff out to me. And she'd tell me like who I needed to know and what some story ideas might be. And Bronwyn was incredible for that as well. She left me a handover package that I still don't think I've even gotten through all of it. It has so much in it, and so many hints, and so many names, and so many potential stories. And then just so many shortcuts about like how to do layout and some of the more technical stuff that the two of them really are what got me going here. And I remember how quick Martha would do layout. And then she stayed through December. And when I did my first paper on my own in January, I know that the Glacier team gave me an easy one. They only made it 8 pages, but it still took me like right up till deadline as I was trying to like figure out all the how to paste a photo or how to like add more columns or things like that. And now I think I'm pretty quick with it. I almost make every deadline. Some of the island wides are a bit tricky. That 32 pager the other week was a whopper, a record whopper, in fact. But we did get it out somehow. And yeah, the layout I'll just talk about for, well, yeah, some of the different things of being editor. One, from a technical perspective, is layout. Like that is a big part of the job, and that's pretty much all of my Wednesdays, which is our production day, is doing that. And it's fun, and I had done a little InDesign in college, but it's not something we've got really extensive experience with. And I think that schools may want to put some more emphasis on that, just because, and I know not every, a lot of editors don't do their own layout, but in small town papers, you know, like you're the person and you're doing it. So I feel I've come a long way with that. InDesign it's kind of like Excel. It's so deep a program. I don't know if you could ever master it completely, but every week I kind of like find a new thing or a new shortcut, which makes things kind of exciting. And then, yeah, what else about being editor? I think that all the stuff that I used to be able to pass off to my old editors, it's now comes to me. Like there's a phone call from someone, that's you answering it. There's someone coming in wondering why something was done this way. You're the one answering for it, and there's no one really to pass this off on anymore. And no, and most of it is not like complaints or anything. Like often it's most times it's just people coming to talk and chat with you, and that also is very new to me. Like we would get people walking in the office at my old papers, but then they always went and talked to the editor. And now like people are coming in with stories, or a lot of times just musings or comments about things that are going on in town. And you know, I love all of them, and I've learned a lot that way. But it's just a very different, much more front-facing role than I've ever been used to. And I do like it. It really gets you engaged with people. And then the other big thing about being an editor is just the email volume is incredible. And I know that's the case in a lot of jobs, but if you let that go, even for a couple hours and check back, you've got a ton of things to deal with. So those are some of the, and then also the responsibility of what goes in the paper is ultimately on you too. And in a way, you know, I don't keep out much stuff, I would say. But you do have a lot of responsibility in like what the narrative of the week is. And that's not taken lightly by me. That's a big task. So yeah, a few things about Bowen I have noticed. One of them is that the submissions to the paper are just incredible. I have not ever experienced anything like that before, where people they're not only writing a lot of content, it's very high quality content. Like these are written extremely well, they're researched extremely well. And if these people had if they had wanted to, I have no doubt they could have gone into journalism and media. And in fact, some have. I find out there are a lot of journalists or former journalists on the island. And a lot of times when I find out that they are, and then I read their stuff, it kind of clicks. So the content is just very good, and the photo submissions are so vivid and wonderful, and people have some not only amazing cameras on this island, but an amazing eye, and they're very alert. Like they're catching whale pods for the couple minutes or seconds that they surface. They're catching like celestial stuff, birds that maybe land for a brief amount of time. And we've just had so many good photos that way. And these complement so well, because well, I try to be a lot of places, but I can't be everywhere as one person. And the fact that we get so many of these really helps every week. And I think that speaks to probably my favorite thing about this role is just how much people seem to like the undercurrent and see it as an important part of the community. And that's very refreshing. And it's, I would say, on the, like, this level of support, I would say is on the rare side in media, especially the newspaper these days. They're either seen as, you know, there's misinformation or a lot of times just indifference toward it. But here, it's just, I've been like overwhelmed by how much people like the paper and read the paper and talk to me about stuff that they saw in the undercurrent. And people I wouldn't always expect either, like younger people are telling me about stuff they see in the paper or they have a subscription. And I just think that's so cool, and it makes my job a lot easier when you don't, when the underlying attitude toward the paper is so positive. Like even if it's just indifferent, that's like, yeah, you can work with it, but it's not very inspiring. If people think you're, you know, fake news, that's just hard to work with and depressing. But when people really like the paper, that's such a boost going to work each day and knowing that there's support for it out there. So that's really been incredible. And then let's see what else I've noticed while I've been here. Oh, another thing that I really like, and is also pretty much the opposite of what I experienced in Ontario, is that I know so many people here in the community now, and I've gotten to know so many of you through stories or just going to an event and talking with people there. And like really just walking down the street, like it seems a lot of people know who I am even before I know them. And I've had so many people come up to me and say, hey, you're Alex, or you're the new editor. And I'm like, sorry, have we met? And they're like, no, you don't know me, but I know you. And then I get to know them, which is nice. But it's pretty neat, I think, compared to and part of that is to do with COVID being, I won't say obviously that it's over, but right now there are much less restrictions than there have been in the past. And so people are getting out and events are happening again. That's one thing I've heard, is that I've done so many stories where my lead is like, this is the first time that this event has happened in 3 years or something like that. Like, I know Bowfest was back. They might have done a little something last year, but I think in like a big way, this was its return this year. And other events like that. And so it's just so like, it sounds cliche, but like I go to the grocery store or the coffee shop and there's someone I know. And I really like that sort of intimacy on this island. And I know it helps that I live and work in the Cove, because I have heard too that like there's the type of person on Bowen that you might not see them for a few years and then they pop up at something and you go, oh, how's it been? And it turns out they haven't left the island this whole time. But you can really, I don't even think I've explored every road on Bowen. You can really tuck yourself away here, but being in the Cove, and then certainly getting out of the Cove a lot too, and going to events and stuff, has really just let me meet so many people. And then like going and volunteering and signing up for things too, like I scorekeep at baseball in the summer, and I play rec hockey over at the gym. And now that we're able to like do all these things again, it's just, and I know Bowen's a pretty friendly and community anyway, but now that we can be out again, I've really enjoyed that. And it also leads to getting stories and information when you're talking to people, and they like to talk about what's going on with them, and they maybe drop a hint about what's going on, or maybe you ought to look into this, or this person would be good to interview for a neighbor profile, which I am in the process of bringing back. I know those were very popular, and I often get asked if they're ever going to be around again. They will be. I think especially now that we're going into some of the more sleepy months on Bowen, I'd call them. There'll be time to do more sort of long form stuff with less events going on. But maybe there are more winter events. I know I came here during COVID and more COVID restrictions. So I don't know, maybe it is a happening place. I wouldn't mind a little cool down after that summer we had, to be honest. And it's kind of nice to be able to go to the cafes again and not have to wait about half an hour to get something. I must be sounding like a local there, but no, and that too. I'm almost here a year now, and I've kind of gotten to see everything once. I know when Peter hired me, he said we were talking about how to approach the columns and the editorials, and he said, "Well, Alex, in truth, you really get to have an opinion about life on Bowen after you've lived here for 20 years, and before that, they don't really want to hear from you." So he's like, kind of write your columns more as observations as a newcomer, rather than, coming in here and telling people what to do. So in about 19 years and a month, I'll check back and start, telling people how I think things should be done. And yeah, I have really liked everything about. I've liked the paper, obviously. I like the place is gorgeous. I never pictured Bowen could be this beautiful, but everywhere I go is just lovely. And the swimming, I like to swim out in the ocean, and the beaches have been so good here. When you get, they're all good. My favorites personally are out on the west side. Tunstall Bay, of course, but often that's very busy. So then there's a couple smaller ones. I think it's an all Bowen crowd, so I won't be spoiling them, and I'll just say it's the ones at the end of Cape Roger Curtis Lane there. I know my friends have joked with me not to mention them because they don't want them to get flooded, but I think we all know about those gems. And then the views are just like when you go out to the golf course there, and from that beach at the parking lot is just stunning. And there's really like no, like, or I did Hiker's Trail the other week. I haven't done the full Garner yet because I need to get more fit, but even just going up a third of the mountain, and I could see downtown Vancouver and Mount Baker. And I was just like, wow, I can't believe there's a place like this in Metro. I know Metro Vancouver is very pretty, but Bowen just seems to have something extra to it almost. And I'm sure that is a bit because there's less people, but just naturally, it's in such a gorgeous location. That yeah, it's so, we're so spoiled here. I find like every day on everything else, someone is posting about whale ponds going by, and or like, yeah, get down and see the bioluminescence now. And I just love seeing, even if I don't get down in the middle of the night, right then, I do like seeing the pictures and things. And yeah, oh yeah, just a few more things is that when I came here, I was worried, not worried, but I thought there might not be that much news going on, but there has been a lot of news. And I thought it would be, you know, the community stuff would be almost the whole paper. And the community stuff is very, there's a lot of it here, and a lot of it is good content. But there, as far as news goes, like I came here and there was, I think my first news story was about one of the local like water boards, like water service areas. And when I realized there was like 7 or 8 of them, and news comes out of each one, and then I took a look at our committee list, I was like, oh yeah, I'm gonna, and then just council itself, I was like, I'm gonna be kept busy here, and I'm almost like a civics reporter now. I was a little in Ontario. I'll mention another small town. I covered St. Clair Township Council, but I never got involved with it to the extent that I have here. And just again, like here, I quickly met all the councillors and I see them around, and the mayor, and there's no like separation from the people, either on the council or on the committees or the municipal staff. So yeah, the news has, and then like there's been some pretty big stories too. Like obviously when the prime minister came here, that made national news. The whole park thing has made Metro Vancouver news. That's all over the major, getting a lot of major coverage. And so like a lot is happening on Bowen that's not only important here, but has people like looking at us from outside the island. And so my impression of it is being kind of like, it is a sleepy place sometimes, but there is plenty happening. And so I definitely don't have to worry about there never not being enough content in a week. And then, yeah, I just wanted to touch on obviously the big one that just happened is the election itself. And I was told by Bruce Russell that you haven't really assumed the position of editor until you've covered the Bowen Island municipal election. And he was so right about that, because I've covered the 2 federal elections. One I was in Prince Rupert, one I was in Ontario, and I thought those were a lot of work. But looking back at it now, those are, you get the candidates dropping into your town once in a while. They're going all over their riding. And so maybe you cover a debate, or maybe you cover a like campaign stop. And then that's kind of it. And they're probably not in your town on election night. And that count is being done very far away. But with Bowen here, like it's all right here, and you know everyone running, and you see them all the time, and they're seeing each other, and there's just so much close interaction. And so that kicked off, and even before campaign season technically started, like once the nomination period opened, we were on the roll, and with posts and kind of campaign, like technically not campaigning because season hadn't started, but you knew who was running and not running, and you were starting to get talk about, you know, what people wanted to talk about or see. And then we did the all candidates debate, which was so much more work than I could have ever pictured. I thought, oh, we'll just get these people together in a room and ask them a few questions. But then Hope Dallas was nice enough to share her planning from the last one with me. And then I saw what we all needed, and I was like, oh wow, this is going to take some effort. So me and Tracy got to planning. Oh, and of course I have to mention, I haven't yet, but Tracy Wade, this paper could not run without her. She is just so incredible, and she has her advertising half and I have my editorial half, but she really does so much more. She helps me so much with my half, just with like questions I have or advice I need, or just so much like at work, and just getting to know Bowen and in life, that she is really just a real gem for that paper. And she's been there a while. She knows all the ins and outs, and she really helps it quite literally get out the door each week, including distribution days on Thursday. So yeah, me and her got to planning, and we somehow got everybody into one place on Sunday there. And then thankfully, a lot of my friends came before and helped me set things up. And then a lot of people helped clean up after. I know, Andrew, you were a big help with those stage pieces, the heavy ones. And yeah, but that was quite a big undertaking. I think it went well. We learned a lot for next time, specifically the online audio and how to make that actually work. But I thought as far as the in-person one in the room went, it went pretty well. And I was just really glad that everybody showed up, both the candidates and the people. But yeah, the election period, I would say it was more intense than I expected, I would say. And talking to people who have been here for the last one, they seem to think that it was more intense than previous years as well. And in a way, that's good. It shows me that Bowen is passionate about the issues here. And you want that. You see some of these municipalities, they can barely get a third of the people to vote. And last time we were at 2/3 in 2018, and I know people told me they were disappointed that it dipped, and it's still like almost double what some much larger communities get. So our voter turnout is good. I guess I was a little, on the Facebook group, I thought some of the threads were a little disappointing to see and more personal than they needed to be a lot of times. And I was surprised at that, because in most cases, like, I've talked with the person behind the comment and it's been nothing but pleasant and a good interaction. And I know they're good people. And it's not just the election. I think sometimes there's something about that group that you get on there and you start writing, and your comment maybe gets away from you, and you say some things that I'm certain you wouldn't say if you were just talking to that person in person, one-on-one. And so I was a little surprised and disappointed at some of the rhetoric on there in the election, but I am hopeful that now that this is over, we will all come back together again, because this is such a small community and this is such a intimate community, and like we're all on the same like groups or teams or committees or going to the same things, that there's not really like room for that. And so I'm hopeful that's just, you know, passions run high. I'm hopeful that'll just be a one-off, and maybe come 2026 we can think of some way to maybe address that. Maybe that group needs a pause now and then, but certainly that's no knock on Jen. I know she works hard to run that place, and I do find a lot of good things on there. Like that's how I learned that the pop-up flu shop was, or flu shot clinic the other week was happening. And people put great pictures and stories on there, but I think we just gotta remember that there is, you know, always someone on the other end of your comment. And if we do that, yeah, so I think there's a lot more, obviously, but I think that is a lot of the main stuff that I've noticed for now. I'm sure there'll be so much more I notice as I spend more time here and more seasons. And I say I've gotten to know a lot of people, but I'm still meeting new people all the time and finding out new groups exist, and there's always new groups forming, things like that. So Robert, we might have to do another one of these maybe next year sometime if you'll have me back. But yeah, I think that's the main stuff I wanted to touch on for tonight. And if there's a few questions, I'm happy to give them a shot.
That'd be great. I'm going to ask that people use the raised hand feature in the reactions tab at the bottom of your screen so that we can pick people in order. I'm going to take the chair's prerogative of asking the first question. I was surprised at some of the things you have to do as editor. I didn't realize that the layout was left to you. And I'm really impressed that not only do you have to write the paper, but you have to put it together. That's quite amazing. What I am curious about, and I've never known, is what is the role of your publisher? What does Matt Blair do?
Well, Matt puts out all the fires that I cause. He's very good at that. So Matt is also publisher at the North Shore News, and obviously that's a much bigger paper and a much bigger there's a lot more to deal with there, but he helps me a lot with I'll ask him, like, if something comes up, I'm not really sure if I should run it or not, or I want to like talk about, what do you think about this? Is it appropriate? I'll write him and say, hey, what do you think about this? Like, and he comes at it from all angles, like not just, you know, is the content appropriate? He's like, are there legal ramifications, or, you know, are there financial ones? And what he will do a lot of the time is if it's something pretty, you know, you need someone a little higher up on it, he'll make a call on my behalf, on the paper's behalf. And he is amazing at, you know, kind of sorting out all types of problems. I know I joke about putting out fires, but quite literally, he's done that a couple times for me. And he's just a great resource to have. And I feel very good that he's always been so supportive of both me and the paper, and he'll put the full weight of Glacier into helping us. And so that's, and then also just making sure like he does some of the more technical things, like getting like working deals with the printer, and I believe he does a little work in ads as well. And then a lot of it, he's going out and meeting people and sort of building relationships. So he does a lot. All the business stuff I don't know well enough to give the full rundown of what he does, but I know it's extensive, and he has a lot of long days as well. But he is what Peter said is that when he stepped down, he wanted to make sure the next person cared about Bowen as much as he did. And Matt is absolutely Peter wouldn't have picked him if he didn't really feel passionate about the Undercurrent. So
that's really good to hear. We have very little time. Let's see if we can get through the questions pretty quickly. Next up is Peter.
Yeah, very quickly. My wife would like to know if you're going to do an interview with each of the new council members and any mayors you happen to find lying around. And I'd like to know when you're going to publish more on the World Cup of Cricket in the Undercurrent.
You know what? It is first, I will be interviewing the new council members. I actually had a very nice chat with Andrew this morning. That will run this week. I'm going to try to get them tomorrow, but if I can't, I'll put it online later in the week and then the paper next week. As for cricket, I love every sport so much. That is the one sport I cannot figure out at all. I don't know what's going on. I know they're hitting a ball.
Give me a call, I'll explain it to you offline.
Please do. I can equate it somewhat to baseball, but then they start
talking terrible game
about overs and wickets, and I'm just completely lost. So you'll need to help me there, Peter.
Okay, will do. It's a promise.
Alex, I have to say that you are an excellent editor for Bowen, and thank you for it. It's like you're participating in the community, you're open, you're involved, you're out there, you're putting yourself out there to meet people and stuff like that. It's like it's just all positive. So thank you.
Well, thank you, Lynn. That means a lot.
Yeah, it's you're such a great fit. It's really wonderful. I'm glad you touched on the thing about from Facebook, because I found that quite horrifying, that the vitriol and stuff that came out on there was just kind of shocking. And I don't think I've ever been that ashamed of fellow Bowen Islanders as I was after that. And in my head, I was kind of curious of when you've written an editorial or something like that, and I know there's many sides to the story and people have their own opinions, but have you ever gotten that kind of negative vitriol back yourself for something that you've written in our paper?
I have, and I won't go into what it was, but I have gotten more than one, let's say, letters of that comment type, and they're rare. I want to make that clear, but they do happen. And then that, as Robert mentioned earlier, is one of the times I'll often involve Matt, and then Matt will make a call, and he can usually smooth things over pretty well. Yeah, I will say a lot of those were, most of the stuff I got like that was during the election. And I think a lot of it, whether it's election or not, like if the person had just say come to the office and aired their concern with me, we could have talked it out. Often it's a misunderstanding about an approach I took or something that was said. And I just think it's always better if you can take care of it in person, other than whether it's a comment or an email. And so I always welcome anyone to drop by, whether it's good or bad that they want to share. And usually when we're done, we're in a much better place.
Great. Okay. And I apologize if you've gotten crap feedback like that, because, you know, everybody's got their own opinion. I think the only time, one article you wrote, when you wrote about the park and you were so cheerful and happy in how you wrote it up, that I was like, whoa, some of us are not too sure about this. Like, and I was thinking, is that something you would write to the editor about? And I'm like, no, but it was just like the only time in the whole year that I was thinking,
No, and I got park coverage feedback, but it was not mean in any way. It was just, you know, rightly pointing out to me that it's still a proposed park. It's not a done deal. And then I learned very quick that opinions differ on the park. And so going forward, my coverage on that will be very neutral, which is what I always go for. So,
Hillary.
And then on the layout, was the article for Rotary for the paper too long?
Oh, no, the length is fine. It's perfect.
Great. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Lynn.
Thank you.
Alex, hi there.
Hi.
As everyone says, we're very appreciative of the work you do. Like most of the editors we've had at the Undercurrent, you do a great job and you really do integrate into the community really well. My question is about advertising. Do you get, we know that newspapers are suffering badly at the moment. Do you have a lot of pressure from your publisher as to how much advertising you need to have in order to make the paper be a viable concern?
That I know our current amount is good, and we do get the financials, and we are sustaining ourselves well. Advertising is always tough, and especially during the pandemic, and that I understand. Like, businesses were struggling. A lot of them closed down or weren't open, and the advertising goes with that. I think stuff has gotten better this year, but it's always an ongoing search. But Tracy, she, I think, knows about every business owner on the island, and she finds people that I don't even know about each week. So she's just amazing on that front, and really, like I said, literally does keep us going.
I agree, she's great. And the way deals are offered to, you know, non-economical enterprises are good too. You know, different rates for different people who. I really like that as well.
Yeah, and that's, I think that flexibility is something you have in a smaller community than, say, you know, Vancouver or Toronto, or like, you know, the person you're dealing with, right? Like, you all know who Tracy is. If you're in Toronto and call up the Star, you don't know who that person is, most likely. So building those relationships is something we can really
Yeah, well, thank you very much.
Thanks, Hillary.
And we have a question from the Kaile family, but I don't know who is going to be speaking.
Well,
Michael.
With permission, yes. I'd like to say, and also to Bronwyn too, to both of you, thank you for a remarkable perspective that you've brought, and a calmness that you've brought, and an ability to take the high ground, which is less used in your writings. Having been actively involved in 2 elections and a spectator in the last one, which, by the way, is not an all bad position to be in, believe me. Just watching events. As far as what people write from time to time in Facebook, go back 8 years when they were writing about the docks, and some people will remember that in this Zoom room of ours. And then 4 years ago, there was changes of management within the municipality, etc., etc., etc. So, yeah, you're going to get these outbursts of singularly unfortunate writing. Do you know something? They're very quickly forgotten. They don't linger. They don't. So I hope you'll be able to view them with a perspective that's required. But certainly from ourselves, and I think I can say, because actually, I've been involved with the councillors for the last 8 or 4 years. Just thank you and Bronwyn for the neutrality and the good writings that you brought to our very important medium here on the island. I just wish you well, Alex, and on behalf of my council colleagues who are not here, because we're still the council until the others are sworn in, and may they be sworn in quickly, because I was told yesterday I was fired, and then I turned around and I said, well, I hope with immediate effect. So I want Andrew to know that when there is no pushback here, the seat is warmed up for him, and it's already there, and it's been dusted, and it hasn't been plugged into the hydro. It's perfectly safe, and we're ready to go. But thank you, Alex, and great to settle in a year. So bless you, and we wish you well. Wish you well, Alex.
Thank you, Michael, and I've enjoyed working with you and the entire rest of the council too. You were always very helpful with questions and information, and you don't always find politicians that accessible. I want to say that too, is that you try getting an interview with someone in Ottawa, it's got to go through about 5 people, and you'll get a sentence back at 5 o'clock that doesn't answer your question. So the fact I can find all of you without too much trouble has been wonderful, and you've all been very open, and I'm looking forward to working with the new council members as well, and 2 existing ones. So I think it's going to be a good 4 years.
Well,
and Michael, if you don't think that I'm going to be peppering you frequently to tap your wisdom, I'll be roping you back in.
Well, do you know, sir, your worship to be, all credit to you that you would actually reach out to people, because as we leave, and some people might say, yeah, they're gone, great, but you take with you 4 to 8 years of discussion, involvement, and if you do actually reach out, you will probably be breaking new ground. Because as I look back, I'm not sure we were very good at that. Because we lost people as well, part of the previous administration. So if you do, all credit to you. I would admire you for being open enough to say these aren't bad people, and I might just be able to pick up some information from them. So we wish you well, Andrew, and look forward to talking to you as you require, not as we demand.
if I ever need to be reminded
Thank you, Michael.
why I love living on Bowen Island, I think I heard all about it tonight. Thank you, a future mayor and leaving councillor, for your incredible service to this community. It means so much to the community that people like you are willing to do that. And Alex, you have become integrated into this community. You obviously have come to care a lot about us. I'm really pleased to hear that you were looking towards your role at the time of the next election, which means that I don't see you looking for another job. I see you becoming more and more a part of this community, and the work you do is necessary, and from my point of view and my family's point of view, very much appreciated. and from a leadership in a Rotary, which does not see itself as political at all, the role of community support that we receive from the Undercurrent is so valuable. It makes a difference. And it's wonderful to be connected with people who truly make a difference. Thank you very much for joining us tonight.
Well, thank you, Robert, and thank you to all of Rotary for having me.
Thank you, Alex.
Thanks.